1 here, coming at you with a new Yu-Gi-Oh video, talking about a subject that I don't think I've really seen talked about on YouTube before, and that is the divine attribute, and specifically, cards that deserve the divine attribute. Now, in Yu-Gi-Oh, we know there are 4 cards with the divine attribute. Well, some of you may not know there are 4 cards, but there are actually 4 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh with the divine attribute. And those cards are Slifer the Sky Dragon, Obelisk the Tormentor, the Wind Dragon of Ra, and the Creator of Light, Horika. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. And these 4 cards are the only 4 cards in the game that actually hold the coveted divine attribute, only set aside for the gods. And I get it, these 4 cards own the attribute because they are the Egyptian gods. The game was originally based off Egyptian Yu-Gi-Oh, of Egyptian cards, Egyptian glyphs, everything Egyptian. But now I feel like we've gotten to a point where, yes, these cards are Egyptian, these cards are the Egyptian gods, but a lot of the cards in Yu-Gi-Oh that do deserve the divine attribute don't actually have it. Even though they are gods, they have divine in their name, they don't actually have the divine attribute, and it's only coveted to these 4 cards. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 cards, well, 5 different things that deserve the divine attribute, and basically talking about why I personally believe they should have the divine attribute. So without further ado, let's get into it, because I want to talk about why these cards should have the divine attribute. So, first card on this list, at number 5, Ultimaya Tzolk'in, formerly known as the Crimson Dragon. Now, this card is known in the anime and in the manga as a god. In the anime, I believe it was a 1,000-year-old god. In the manga, it was like something similar, like 10,000 years ago. And even in the card in the manga, it was known as the ultimate god, Ultimaya Tzolk'in. So, a card like this, that actually has the name God in it in the manga, and in the anime is based off a god giving the ability to basically travel through time to any of the signers, being something that was actually used to just destroy everything, having servants that are basically angels in the forms of Ancient Fairy Dragon, Stardust Dragon, Life Form Dragon, Crimson Dragon, no, not Crimson Dragon, Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, Red Dragon Archfiend, and 5th one's name escapes me, but this card that's been in the game, it was in 5Ds and was introduced as a god, and also in the manga was a god, doesn't have the divine attribute. You get what I'm saying here? It's a card that is technically a god in the form of the anime and the manga, but it doesn't have that attribute that says it's divine. It's a dark attribute, but why isn't it a divine when it is a god? Do you get where I'm coming from here? Like, if a card is a god in general, all forms of nature, I believe that this card should be a god. And seeing as this card is just literally in the manga and the anime a god, it deserves the divine attribute. And it's just been pulled off as a god for the longest time in manga, anime, all of that I feel like this card was one of those cards that did deserve the divine attribute, but just got shafted and never got it in the end. So, Ultimaya Tzolk'in is the 5th card. Let's go on to number 4, because this card definitely deserves the divine attribute. So, 4th card that I feel like that deserves the divine attribute, Elemental Hero Divine Neos. Now, this is a little pet peeve of mine. This card is basically the deity of all heroes, yes? It takes 5 different types of monsters to summon: Neos Station, a Neos monster, and an elemental hero. It takes 5 monsters, including at least one of each of these monsters. It may not be considered a god in the anime, and only is god by name, but this is divine Neos. This is the godly Neos. This is a Neos that is actually a god. Being that Jaden sent his cards into space, got them created in fusing with Neos space, all to the way to the point where Neos actually became a god. And you're telling me a card that went through all of that, basically going through trials, going through space, going through all this crap, doesn't get the right to be called a god? Even though in the end, he is a divine being. His name is literally divine. He is a god, but he has not got the divine attribute. This confused me. So this is just another card that I feel like should have the divine attribute. But yeah, Elemental Hero Divine Neos wears the divine attribute on him. He's divine, he's a god, he went through trials, he was basically a demigod that turned into a god. He should be a god. He should be a divine attribute card. But that's number 4. Let's go on to number 3. So at number 3, we have Divine Serpent Ge, known as the Great Leviathan. Literally, this card is basically a god as well. It was the seal of Orichalcos' power. It's the card that literally took the knights to be, and in the end, 3 other gods to be. Literally, this card stood its ground and absorbed the power of Obelisk, Slifer, and Ra, and stood its ground against them when it wasn't even at full power. Why isn't this a god? Why isn't this card that literally stood its ground with 3 gods, was older than the Egyptian gods, was the power source of the card that literally stole the souls of, I believe, thousands? How isn't Divine Serpent Ge a divine card? It's literally the Great Leviathan, and it's a god. In the name, again, divine. Divine Serpent. You're a god. You stood your ground against Obelisk the Tormentor, Slifer the Sky Dragon, and the Wind Dragon of Ra. You stole their power as well. You have their power and your own. You stood your ground against them, and you're not a god. How does this make sense? How does a card that literally stood its ground against the Egyptian gods and also just stole their power not become a god? How is this not a divine card? I don't know. I really don't know. But that's number 5. Let's go on to number 2. No, that was number 3. Let's go on to number 2. Okay, so number 2 is a set of cards, really. It's a set of cards that I personally feel like really do deserve the divine attribute, especially seeing as what they are. And this is Loki, the Lord of Aegir, for the Lord of Aegir, and Odin, the Lord of Aegir. I hope I pronounced that correctly. These 3 cards are literally gods. The god of thunder, Thor, the god of mischief, Loki, and the All-Father, Odin. You're telling me 3 gods, literal gods, do not have the divine attribute? These cards are literal gods in the real world and in the anime, mangas, everything, in Marvel, for Christ's sake. These are gods. And you're telling me literal gods that were made in the anime, and as physical cards, don't have the divine attribute. These are literal gods. I'm not even joking. These are literal gods in mythology, in reality, and in the anime. I don't understand how the 3 gods, the Father, the Son, and the adopted brother, are not gods. I don't understand how these aren't divine. I honestly don't. These are 3 cards that are literal gods that really should have the divine attribute, but just don't. There's literally no reason for these cards to not have the divine attribute, other than it being like, oh, they're the Egyptian gods, why they should be the only ones to have the attribute. Seriously, they're literal gods in real life, and they should have the divine attribute. It doesn't make sense to me, it just doesn't, but honestly, let's go on to the number 1. So number 1 is another set of cards, which I actually need to read their names because I forgot them slightly. Okay, so we have the Wicked Eraser, the Wicked Dreadbrute, and the Wicked Avatar. Now, for those who don't know what these are the anti-Egyptian gods. These cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are a great manga, a great short manga series, only 5 chapters, in the Yu-Gi-Oh! History, which was between Battle City, which was set just after Battle City. Didn't get released as an anime, but these are gods. In the manga, they were set as gods. They are the anti-gods to beating the Egyptian gods. Literally, the Wicked Eraser gains 1,000 attack for every monster your opponent for every card your opponent has, and when it dies, it destroys all cards your opponent has. The Wicked Dreadroot just halves the attack and defense of all monsters the opponent controls, and the Wicked Avatar always has 100 more attack than every monster on the board. So it always has 100 more attack than the Wind Dragon of Ra. These 3 cards were set to beat their Egyptian counterparts, yet they are not classified as gods. Even though they are on the divine scale according to the manga, these cards are not treated as gods. Out of everything on this list that I have stated, out of Ge, out of Neos, out of Ultimate Zoken, out of the 3 Nordic gods, these 3 cards, out of every card on this list, deserve the divine attribute more than anything. They are literal representations of the Egyptian gods, corrupted, negative versions that are designed to kill them. They are anti-gods. They are gods. They are the anti-versions of the gods. In the manga, they were specified as gods. They are gods. And they literally kill gods. These 3 cards, out of everything on this list, were made, designed, and created to kill the Egyptian gods. And them not having the divine attribute is the biggest slap in the face. They were part of the original series. They were literally put there as gods in the manga, being able to evolve their status to a next level of divine being on the level of Ra, if you had the right card, and they are literally there to beat them. These are gods. If any of these cards on this list deserved the divine attribute, it was these 3. And that's really one of the reasons why I wanted to make this list. Looking at cards that deserve the divine attribute. And these 5 different things, Ge, Ultimate Zoken, Divine Neos, the Nordic gods, the Wicked Avatar, the Wicked gods, they all should be divine. But only 4 cards in the game have the divine attribute. These cards definitely deserve the divine attribute and should have it, just based on what they are, and that's why I made this video. But guys, tell me what you think in the comment section below. Tell me what cards you think should have the divine attribute. Tell me if I've missed anything. Tell me if I've maybe got something wrong here or there. I did try to research a lot of these cards right before this video. Like, I looked at Ultimate Zoken, making sure he was actually a god in the anime and manga. I looked at Divine Neos. Honestly, he is a god. He's divine. Ge, Seal of Orichalcos, definitely he's the divine, the great Leviathan, and like the Nordic gods, and even the wicked avatars, the wicked gods, they all deserve the divine attribute. But guys, tell me what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Tell me what you think should be have the divine attribute. Tell me what cards you think shouldn't be on this list, maybe should be changed, maybe should be in a different area on this list. And just don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one, guys. These should be divine attribute cards. Later all, Robot1, signing out.